Israeli Ambassador to the United States, Yechil Lایتر, thank you so much for coming to Voice of America and being in our studios here in Washington today.
It's good to be with you. It's the voice of Israel mixing with the voice of America.
It's a good combination.
Good
Thank
combination.
You. So I'd like to start by going over some news of the day, which is regarding the US-backed efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. So today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recalled his negotiating team from Qatar, where they had been involved in these indirect talks with the Hamas terror group through Qatari and Egyptian mediators. The US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, also announced on X that the US side is recalling its team from Doha as well. Now, Netanyahu's office did not describe the Hamas proposal as either good or bad when it said we're recalling our team after we study this proposal, but Witkoff, by contrast, was quite critical, and he said this proposal shows Hamas is being selfish and clearly shows a lack of desire to reach a ceasefire. So my question is, does Israel share Witkoff's view of this Hamas proposal?
Well, first let me say that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has made a superhuman effort to get our hostages released and get this ceasefire deal done. I don't think anybody could have had the positive effect as he has had on these negotiations. But we are dealing with a ghoulish terrorist organization that celebrates death, murder, and mayhem. And yes, they don't want an end to this war. They want to prolong the war because they want to stay in power. And really what's at the root of their refusal to release their hostages and to reach a ceasefire is because anything that will compromise their permanent role in Gaza is something they're not going to accept. And of course, their permanent role in Gaza is something that we're never going to accept. Hamas has to be defeated. And it could be over tomorrow if they release our hostages. It's the 21st century. They're holding human beings in dungeons. It's just incomprehensible. And we're willing to say, leave, get on boats, go to whoever's going to take you, and we'll end this war. But we want our hostages out, and we want Hamas out.
Speaking of getting Hamas out, that's also a goal of the United States. Steve Witkoff said, in light of what Hamas presented, the US is going to consider alternative options to get the hostages home and to create a more stable environment in Gaza, which won't have terrorists running the place. Given the close coordination that Israel and the US have had on trying to resolve the Gaza conflict, what can you share about alternative options that exist for dealing with this?
Well, there are a few things we know for sure. Hamas won't be in place in Gaza. That's absolutely out of the question. The Palestinian Authority, which has failed in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank, will not be in exclusive control in Gaza either because of the corruption and their sponsorship of terrorism. But there are other options, and there are many interested parties around the world, actually, that are interested in seeing Gaza be normalized. And most of the people of Gaza want Gaza normalized. They want to live in a civil society. But it has to be rid of the terrorist element first. So there are discussions taking place. It's not a good idea to discuss them openly, certainly not on television, because they stand a better degree of success if they're spoken about quietly. So there are discussions taking place with interested parties, with good parties, both in the Middle East and outside the Middle East, to make sure that we create a situation in Gaza which is going to be beneficial to Gazans and ensure the security of Israel.
I'd like to talk now about the state of Iran's nuclear program in the aftermath of the 12-day war last month. What can you share about Israel's observations in terms of what Iran has been doing at these various nuclear sites that were attacked by both Israel and the US during that war?
What have they been doing since the war?
Since the war ended, has Israel observed any particular type of activity at these sites that would be of concern?
Let me assure you of one thing. that we're on top of it. And we are not going to allow this government of Iran to try and reconstitute in any way, number one, its nuclear project, number two, its ballistic missile project, and number three, its support for proxies in the region. Let's not forget, Iran, while it has serious problems with its infrastructure, for example, right? We have a serious water crisis going on. Don't the people of Iran deserve water flow, electricity 24/7? And yet this government of the mullahs spent over $500 billion developing ballistic missiles and a nuclear program, an enrichment program, intended to erase another country. They spent $350 million a year supporting Hamas. They spent $700 million a year supporting Hezbollah. They gave the Assad regime over $15 billion. Where's all that money that's been absconded from the Iranian people? So we're not going to move into a situation again where the Iranian people are going to be robbed of what belongs to them, and Israel's going to be threatened again by this ring of fire that they've created, and we're just simply not going to allow it to happen.
The Iranian government has said repeatedly since the end of that war that they don't want to give up uranium enrichment. They're insisting that is a basic right of theirs. And how serious a threat does Israel see from the possibility of these enrichment facilities being started up again, either at the places that were attacked or maybe even in other sites that were not attacked or not even disclosed publicly?
You know, this leadership in Iran, and it's so unrepresentative of the Iranian people, which have such a rich and beautiful culture. These leaders are, they're chatterboxes. They talk a lot with very little substance. So, you know, what does that mean that they have a right to enrich? Nobody has a right to enrich. People who want a civilian nuclear program have it. There are dozens of countries with a civilian nuclear program. And the way it's done is that it is imported, the fuel is imported, it's processed, and then it's removed, all under international supervision. So if that's what this government would really want, that could be arranged tomorrow. And that's what the negotiations that Steve Witkoff was running intended to accomplish, a civilian nuclear program. But when you insist on enrichment, what you mean is one thing. You mean nuclear weapons. And we're not going to allow for enrichment because we're not going to allow for nuclear weapons. Because, look, these guys, it's much worse than the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union could be kept at bay because of mutually assured destruction. These mullahs don't care about destruction. So they cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. It's that simple.
Israel's position appears very clear on that point. So can you say anything about what Israel is doing to prepare for the possibility that you may have to attack Iran again?
We hope that's not the case. Look, the Middle East has been changed. It's been changed because the Netanyahu government led a process whereby these Iranian proxies have been so diminished. Who are they left with? You know, even during the 12-day war, allies such as China, Russia, North Korea, nobody came to their aid. This goes to the fundamental difference between democracy and autocracy, between tyrannies and freedoms. The United States and Israel stood together, democracies. The tyranny of Iran was left alone. So we hope very much that we won't have to get into a situation where once again we'll have to use kinetic or military action to ensure that they don't have ballistic missiles or a nuclear program. But now that the Middle East has been so changed, the Hamas diminished, Hezbollah diminished, Assad gone, Iran diminished, the government of Iran diminished, hopefully giving the opportunity for the Iranian people to rise up and take hold of their destiny. Other countries in the Middle East realize too that they're less afraid now, whether it's Saudi Arabia or the Emirates, less concerned about this black cloud that was hanging over the Middle East called the Iranian mullahs.
You mentioned how Iran's proxy axis that had been aligned against Israel has been diminished. One of these proxies that is not completely out of the game yet are the Houthis in Yemen. And Israel has been attacking the Houthis multiple times since May because of persistent fire.
Israel's been responding. The Houthis have been attacking Israel, right?
In response to the intermittent missile fire that has come from Yemen at Israel. What can you tell us about how much damage Israel has caused to the Houthis from these strikes that have happened in recent months?
Well, I'll tell you about the damage that we've caused and which we will cause to the Houthis. But the important thing to understand is that Bab el-Mandeb and the Suez Canal are international waterways. I mean, without maritime shipping, without free maritime shipping, there's no globalization. There's 55,000 maritime ships traversing the oceans every day. And if, a ragtag bunch of guys with missiles on their shoulders are interrupting international trade, this has ramifications for the entire world. So if the world wants to sit by and wait for Israel to take care of it, the German Chancellor Merz said just before the 12-day war, he said, Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us. Well, we're going to do the dirty work for all of you when it comes to the Houthis as well, because we cannot allow people to be shooting ballistic missiles into our civilian population centers, and we also can't allow an international waterway to be shut down. So the Houthis will be dealt with, and it may take a few months, it may take longer than that. But there's no question that Israel, and we hope, and we're quite confident, that we're not going to be alone, that we're going to have new allies in the Middle East. They're going to participate together with us in terminating this threat, not only to Israel and the region, but to international global trade.
What do you think that this coalition might look like? Could it involve other countries participating in some kind of kinetic action in Yemen?
Well, let's ask the question. Who's threatened by the Houthis in Yemen? Aside from Israel, are the Saudis threatened? Are the Emiratis threatened? Why wouldn't they be putting boots on the ground if Israel is ready to do that? They're allies of the United States. We're allies together. We're in this together. We're all threatened together. Together, we can solve this problem. Alone, it's going to be harder to solve.
Well, another development that has come from the 12-day war is Iran stepping up its deportations of Afghans, according to the UN Refugee Agency. UN human rights experts also have noted that Iran is accusing many of these Afghans whom it's deporting of spying for its enemies, including Israel. So how does Israel view Iran using this kind of unsubstantiated accusation as a pretext to deport Afghans to their home country, where many of them face a very dire situation?
Well, this is the essence of a tyrannical government. It mistreats its minorities. It imprisons minorities who disagree with the government. There's tens of thousands of dissidents to the Iranian regime in prison under dire circumstances. We wish that the result of the 12-day war would have been a falling of the regime, but we can't bring down the regime top down. This has to come from the people. And I have a vision that reminds me very much of how Ceausescu came down. He brought out millions onto the streets to support him. And as they were chanting the supporting chants that he required, they changed the chants. And all of a sudden, they express what they really feel. And he was driven away from the balcony and arrested within a few days and brought before a firing squad. This is the end of tyranny. This is how tyranny has to end. These freedom deprivers, these death cult kinds of people, they will end up like Ceausescu. It's a matter of time, but I have complete faith. Look, Iran is one of the cradles of human civilization. I mean, think about it. You have, the rules of Cyrus, for example, right? By the way, Cyrus in our Bible is called Messiah. There's no other character outside of the Jewish faith in the Bible that's called Messiah. But Isaiah refers to Cyrus as Messiah. Cyrus gave the order to rebuild the Temple of Jerusalem. There's a very close connection between our civilizations, between Judaism and Zoroastrianism, for example. It was tremendous intellectual ferment between our civilizations. So I'm confident that particularly because it's such a rich culture and civilization, that the people are going to find a way to send these mullahs packing and to once again create the great country that Iran was and will be.
Well, I want to ask you about that faith that you have that the Iranian people can rise up in the way that you would hope. Are there any signs that you're seeing from inside Iran, since the war ended, that indicate some kind of groundswell of sentiment that would get people back onto the streets? Are you seeing anything like that?
The very fact that the Voice of America broadcasts in Iran to millions and millions of people, and millions of people wait for your broadcast, is indicative of where the spirit is. And the truth is that there are others as well, and there are constant signs. I meet with opposition members, leaders around the world. I've met with them in Europe, meet with them here in Washington.
Leaders of the Iranian opposition.
The leaders of the Iranian opposition. I would only say one thing, and this is a prayer that I have, is that the leaders of the opposition come together. What's needed is unity. You have so much opposition. The problem with the opposition is disunity. And they just have to come together first to bring about change. Afterwards, through elections, let the ballot box determine whether you're going center-right, center-left, conservative, less conservative, liberal. But first, bring this death cult down. Come together to do it.
I wanted to ask you about some other regional issues, particularly with the Abraham Accords. So the 12-day war led two of Israel's Abraham Accords partners, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, to issue statements that condemned Israel for attacking Iran, while Morocco, which is the third partner, had some large-scale protests in recent weeks in which Moroccans were protesting against Israeli actions in Gaza and Iran. So with these statements and protests, how do you see the health of the Abraham Accords relationships today?
I think it's very healthy, and I think we're on a healthy diet, and it's going to get even better. Because I'll tell you, up until October 7th, I did think tank work. So I spent a lot of time in Abu Dhabi. And you see, I wear a kippah, right? So I felt more comfortable on the streets of Abu Dhabi than I did in most European cities, okay? And who could have thought that was possible 10 years ago? But the mutual respect, admiration, free flow of ideas that I experienced in Abu Dhabi was absolutely Western. And there was an appreciation for Jewish culture, for Western culture. The same in Manama, in Bahrain. The same certainly in Morocco. I mean, the relationship that we have with Morocco is very close. I mean, a lot of tourism, a lot of back and forth. Can it get better? Sure, it's going to get better. But look at the storm it weathered. We're in a war with Hamas now for a year and a half. And the fact of the matter is that these countries are as interested in our defeating Hamas as we are, because they're countries that are fighting against Islamic extremism. They don't want to see the Muslim Brotherhood gain control anywhere. So this is absolutely crucial. So here and there you're going to have some critical statements, but now, particularly after the 12-day war, and once Hamas is totally defeated, we're going to see the Abraham Accords move into 2.0. They're actually going to expand, solidify, and grow. No question.
So I was going to actually ask you about that. What impact do you think that this 12-day war, which badly damaged the Iranian government's military capabilities, the greatest blow that they've had in their 46-year existence of the Islamic Republic, what do you think that damage has done to the perceptions of other Arab nations who, like Israel, see the Iranian nuclear program as a threat, but they haven't been ready yet to say we will establish ties with Israel?
Well, it's an excellent question. Look, there was this big black cloud hanging over the Middle East until the 12-Day War. It was this fear of a big country called Iran with nuclear power. And everybody was afraid that once it tripwired into nuclear capability, they'd be the dominant power in the Middle East, and all the countries would be subservient to Iran. Saudi Arabia was afraid of it. The Emirates were afraid of it. Bahrain was. Everybody's afraid of it. That's changed. The big black cloud is not so threatening. China didn't come to its aid. Russia didn't come to its aid. There was no Third World War. I mean, you remember before we actually hit and we were talking to the administration about the importance of taking out the nuclear program, there were those who said, you know, this can tripwire into the Third World War. Thousands and thousands will be killed. Well, look, we took out their nuclear capability. We took out the enrichment program. We took out the ballistic missile program. We've degraded the proxies. The Third World War didn't break out. Iran has been seriously degraded. The government has been seriously degraded. And the people have been given a new opportunity of perhaps, hopefully, a lease on life. And the region suddenly feels less threatened by a menacing, mulocratic government in Tehran. So I think we're on the right path.
Can you telegraph any potential announcements on that front in the near future? Are we getting close?
I think that we need to see our hostages out. It's going to be very difficult to do anything with our hostages underground, being held in dungeons by these evil people. We need to see a ceasefire. We need to see Gaza flooded with humanitarian aid. We need to see the people of Gaza feeling comfortable. We need to give them the option if they want to go elsewhere. Nobody should be forced out. But if they want to leave while Gaza is being reconstituted and rebuilt, they should be given that option. Why is it that there are hundreds of millions of people who can travel openly from distressed areas and go elsewhere, but the only people that can't do that are the Gazans? Why doesn't Egypt open up the gate and just let them go if they want to go to Turkey? Erdogan has been very, very defensive of Gaza, of Hamas itself. So why doesn't Erdogan step up to the plate and say, I'm happy to accommodate 100,000, 500,000 if you really, really care about the Gazans. Don't just pay lip service and hit Israel all the time. You know, this has become the favorite sport of Turkey's president. You know, batting the prime minister every day, you know, and calling him all sorts of names, horrific names. It should all stop. And he should say, look, I really do care about the people of Gaza. I'd like to take them in for a while. And then I'd like to put my huge Turkish infrastructure firms in Gaza to help rebuild it. And then I'll have the people go back if they'd like. So people need to step up to the plate. And I think once we have the ceasefire in place, we have a permanent arrangement for Gaza, I think there are going to be a lot of announcements coming very quickly.
You mentioned how China didn't come to Iran's military aid during the war. But as you know, China has had quite a long relationship with Iran economically. Militarily, they provided some technological support over the years. And even earlier this year, there were Western news reports citing Western intelligence sources that China was helping Iran to ship this chemical ingredient for its ballistic missile program. So what can you say about Israel's view of how China, which is also a trading partner of Israel, has been handling its relationship with Iran, Israel's biggest enemy in the region that just fought a war with?
Well, China is a trading partner not only of Israel, China is a trading partner of the entire world, right? I mean, that's why there are negotiations over tariffs with China. Look, there was a lot of talk about the Chinese operating a port in Haifa. Well, the Chinese operate dozens of ports in the United States. There's no special relationship with China. On the contrary, it's very, very difficult for Israeli companies to export any technologies to China. We're very strict about that. But China was involved in helping Iran avoid American sanctions, which is a bad actor activity in the Middle East. If you got sanctions slapped on Iranian oil, China had no business circumventing those sanctions. So, I mean, they were circumventing not only American foreign policy, but the international community. So they were allowing Iran to garner funds that were then used to pay for its nuclear enrichment, for the Houthis, for the Hamas, for Hezbollah. So they have a role in this. And there are troubling signs that China might be trying to assist the government to reconstitute itself. There are some troubling signs.
Can you share what those are?
Well, you know, there's some traffic that is troubling for us. You know, some back and forth, and we just want to make sure that we're not dealing with. You mentioned chemicals. You mentioned the ability to rebuild or reconstitute a ballistic missile program. Those kinds of things. I mean, one of the things that the Iranians saw was that the ballistic missile program is as damaging and as threatening as a potential nuclear program, because you know these ballistic missiles that they create are like people don't understand what they are. And this is imagine a semi-trailer on the highway that's packed with explosives, that's careening through the sky at 4 times the speed of sound. These things create as much damage as a small-scale nuclear bomb. So they are very, very dangerous. Luckily, together with the assistance of the United States, through the missile defense systems, the THAAD missile defense system, the Aegis missile defense systems, and our defense systems, the Arrow, which we developed together with the United States, David's Sling, and the Iron Dome, we kept 88% of these missiles out. But the few that hit, that come through the defense systems, created enormous damage. So we cannot allow them to reconstitute the ballistic missile program, and they're very eager to do so because they saw the extent of the damage. Now, what's interesting is, you know, some of our European friends want to limit them to 4,000 to 2,000 kilometers.
The range of the missiles.
The range of the missiles, right? So, you know, one of my colleagues said to his counterpart in Western Europe, well, why don't we just limit it to 4,000 kilometers? You know? So we'll keep all of Europe within the range, just keep the United States out, right? No, not 2,000, not 4,000, not 6,000. You can't have ballistic missiles that create massive damage. I mean, they had a program. I mean, listen, this is fascinating. They call it a space program. Now, we do have a space program together with the United Arab Emirates. Together, Israel and the Emirates are working on a space program. But the space program that the mullahs had was just a cover for ballistic missiles, for intercontinental ballistic missiles, meaning those missiles that created all of that damage would be intercontinental. They'd be able to hit the United States. That's what their program was. So we've terminated that program. We've compromised their entire industry because we also took out the component elements of that program. We just have to be sure that China or other bad actors don't allow them to reconstitute it.
Would you have a bottom line message for China on what Israel wants to see it do or not do?
Israel's a very small player when it comes to China. The United States obviously leads policy with regard to China. The United States is obviously interested in not seeing a dominant hegemonic China of the East. It threatens all of the U.S. allies, whether it's, of course, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia. I mean, we want to see free maritime trade through the South China Sea. These are basically, U.S.-led interests. We're in the U.S. orbit 100%. So where the U.S. goes in terms of its China policy, we're a step behind and very supportive. So we think that, you know, we could have, there's no reason why we couldn't have good relations with the people of China. We'd like that to be the case, but we certainly don't want to see China acting alongside of those who threaten our very existence. Let's not forget, even after the 12-day war, Khamenei continues to say that his objective is to destroy the Jewish state. Why would anybody want to be partnered with somebody who says they want to destroy a state? So, you know, I'd say to my Chinese friends, step back a minute. This is not the guy you want to be supporting.
Well, speaking of the Jewish state, Iran has its own Jewish minority. There are several thousand Jews still living in Iran today. And the sole Jewish member of the Iranian parliament did say a few weeks ago that 11 Jewish citizens of Iran were arrested during the war. The member of parliament said it was apparently because of some kind of misunderstanding, so the connection between those arrests and the 12-day war is a little bit confusing. But what can you say about the status of those Jews who were arrested and just the status of the Jewish minority in Iran generally, and how they have been treated by Iran during and since this war?
Well, there's a reason why the vast majority of Iran's Jews have left. And what a tragedy, if you think about it. How prosperous the Iranian Jewish community has been around the world. The blessings they brought to cities all over, and how much of a blessing they could have been to the people of Iran and to the culture of Iran, the civilization of Iran. But they were chased out because of the persecution of or lack of tolerance of the Jewish community. Hope and pray that the Jews left in Tehran are not being persecuted by the mullahs. I hope and pray that those who have been arrested have been released. And I would suggest to the mullahs to look more closer to home if they're looking for people who compromise them than the Jewish community of Tehran. They should look over their right or left shoulder before they start looking at the Jews of Tehran in terms of those who might have compromised them prior to the 12-day war.
Just to wrap up, would you like to share a message to the Iranian people?
I look forward to the day when there'll be direct flights between Tel Aviv and Tehran, where the people of Tehran will come and enjoy the ancient civilization of Israel that we have reconstituted. And I'll be able to fly to Tehran and see a reconstituted Iran where freedom is celebrated, where the rich civilization is exposed to the world and celebrated, and where we can do things together to raise the Human Development Index. So many people in the world today still have issues of food security. The technology that we have, the genius of the Iranians, come together. We can solve those problems in much of Africa. We can work together on that. We have solutions for issues that deal with energy that's compromised, energy solutions that are compromised for the people of Iran. Water solutions. We're one of the leaders of water purification in the world. 90% of our industrial water is wastewater. That's reprocessed, okay? So these are technologies that we love to bring to the Iranian people, and together to do more for humankind. And I'm sure that it's going to happen. We just have to hope that it comes faster, at a faster pace.
Well, Israeli Ambassador to the United States, Yechil Lایتر, thank you so much for being with us here at Voice of America today.
It's good to be with you. Thank you for sharing voices.
Thank you.